Lisa stood at the window, gazing out at the picturesque garden that sprawled before her. The sun bathed the entire scene in a golden glow, casting long, soft shadows over the rows of white chairs neatly arranged for the ceremony. Everything was perfect, just as she had imagined it for years. The white lace of her wedding gown shimmered in the light, and for a brief moment, she allowed herself to feel the overwhelming sense of excitement that had built up over the months of planning. Today was the day she would marry Mark, the man she loved. Her heart fluttered as she adjusted the veil that framed her face, wondering what Mark would think when he saw her. She had always dreamt of this day, of walking down the aisle, hand in hand with the love of her life. Her fingers trembled slightly as she touched the delicate lace on her dress, a final reassurance that the day she had envisioned for so long was finally unfolding. There was a knock at the door, pulling her from her thoughts. "Lisa, sweetheart, are you ready?" It was her mother, standing in the doorway, her eyes brimming with pride. Her mom looked radiant as ever, her dress a soft pastel pink that complemented the day's theme. Lisa smiled, her lips curving in the way they did when she felt the weight of everything around her. "I think so. It's all happening, Mom," she said, her voice tinged with both joy and a hint of nervousness. Her mother stepped into the room, her arms outstretched for a tight hug. "You look beautiful. Mark is going to be blown away when he sees you." She pulled back, giving Lisa a once-over. "And Vanessa said she has everything under control for the ceremony, so don't worry." Lisa nodded absently, her gaze momentarily drifting to the bouquet of white roses and lavender resting on the vanity table. It was everything she had ever dreamed of, a celebration of love, friendship, and the beginning of a new chapter. The day she had worked so hard for had finally arrived. As her mother fussed with her veil, making small adjustments, Lisa's thoughts wandered to her best friend, Vanessa. She had been Lisa's confidant for years, the one person she trusted completely. But something had been off lately, something subtle that Lisa couldn't quite put her finger on. Vanessa's behavior had changed over the last few weeks. There was a distance, a coldness that seemed to surface whenever she was around Mark. She had always been supportive, but now, whenever Lisa talked about the wedding or Mark, Vanessa's smile didn't seem as genuine as before. It made Lisa uneasy, but she pushed the thoughts aside. After all, it was her wedding day. She couldn't afford to let anything spoil the moment. "Everything's going to be fine, sweetheart," her mother reassured, as if reading Lisa's mind. "Vanessa will take care of everything. Just focus on enjoying the day. It's your time." Lisa forced a smile, nodding again. "You're right, Mom. I can't wait to see Mark." The next few hours passed in a whirlwind of final touches, quiet anticipation, and hurried preparations. The guests slowly began to arrive, dressed in their finest attire, filling the venue with laughter and warmth. Lisa's heart beat faster with every passing minute, the realization sinking in that she was mere moments away from walking down the aisle to the man she had always dreamed of marrying. Vanessa, as promised, was by Lisa's side, helping with the final adjustments, fixing her hair, and making sure everything was perfect. But through it all, Lisa couldn't shake the strange feeling that something was amiss. It wasn't that Vanessa wasn't being helpful, she was, but there was something in her eyes, something that Lisa couldn't quite place. A flicker of something different. Vanessa caught her eye and smiled. "You look stunning," she said, her voice warm but tinged with an undercurrent of something that made Lisa uneasy. "Mark is going to be so lucky." Lisa smiled back, though it felt forced. "Thanks, Vanessa. I can't believe it's finally happening." "I know," Vanessa replied, her gaze flickering toward the door. "But you know, no matter what happens today, you'll always have me." The reassurance in Vanessa's voice should have comforted Lisa, but instead, it sent a shiver down her spine. She looked away quickly, pretending to adjust her bouquet. Was it just pre-wedding nerves? Or was there more to Vanessa's words than she was letting on? Before Lisa could dwell on it further, the sound of music began to play from the ceremony area, signaling that the guests were seated and the wedding was about to begin. Lisa's heart raced in her chest as she heard the soft, gentle murmur of the crowd, the excited whispers that filled the air. This was it. The moment she had been waiting for. Her mother, noticing her hesitation, gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "Are you ready, sweetheart?" Lisa took a deep breath, steadying herself. "Yes. Let's go." As the door to the bridal suite opened, she could see the path to the altar, a sea of white and lavender petals leading to Mark, who stood at the end of the aisle, his back straight and his expression filled with anticipation. Their eyes met, and for a brief moment, everything else faded away. It was just the two of them, standing on the brink of a new life together. Vanessa moved ahead, stepping in front of Lisa with her usual grace. "You're going to be perfect," she whispered, giving Lisa one final, almost too perfect smile. But it didn't reach her eyes. Lisa forced herself to smile back, nodding. "Thanks, Vanessa." As Lisa stepped out into the sunlight, the crowd stood in awe, all eyes on her. She could hear the soft gasp of approval, the excited murmur of the guests, but her focus was only on one person, Mark. Her heart swelled with love as she took each step, imagining their future together. But as she moved closer, she caught a brief glimpse of Vanessa standing off to the side, watching with an unreadable expression. For the briefest moment, Lisa wondered if something was wrong. But before she could dwell on it any further, she reached the altar, and Mark's warm, loving gaze filled her heart with certainty. Everything would be perfect. Nothing could go wrong. The ceremony was flawless, the vows exchanged with tearful sincerity, and the guests cheered as Mark kissed Lisa, sealing their union. But in the back of her mind, a small, persistent thought gnawed at Lisa, an unsettling sense of unease that she couldn't shake. She had just married the love of her life, and yet something felt slightly off. It wasn't Mark, he was everything she had ever wanted. It wasn't the ceremony itself, that had been picture perfect. It was Vanessa. As Lisa and Mark made their way down the aisle, hand in hand, the bright sunlight glistening off the petals scattered beneath their feet, Lisa caught sight of Vanessa standing by the edge of the venue, her smile a little too tight, her eyes a little too cold. For a brief moment, their gazes locked, and Lisa felt a twinge of discomfort. But before she could process it, the moment passed, and Vanessa was once again swept up in the crowd. The reception was in full swing by the time the newlyweds made their grand entrance. Guests were clinking glasses, laughing, and congratulating the couple. The soft hum of jazz music floated through the air as the celebration began in earnest. Lisa couldn't help but feel elated. She was finally married to Mark, and the future was full of promise. But as the evening unfolded, she noticed that Vanessa's presence lingered like a shadow. She was there, of course, as the maid of honor, playing her part perfectly, smiling, laughing, and helping with whatever needed to be done, but something about her felt distant, as if she were playing a role instead of genuinely sharing in the joy of the occasion. Mark was the center of attention, as expected. He was charismatic and charming, his warm smile lighting up the room as he greeted guests, but Lisa couldn't shake the feeling that Vanessa was watching him more closely than was normal. It wasn't overt, but there was an intensity in her gaze that didn't seem right. Lisa would catch her looking at Mark when she thought no one was watching, her expression unreadable. It made Lisa's stomach tighten with discomfort. When the time came for the speeches, Lisa's heart swelled as Vanessa stood up to speak. As the maid of honor, she was expected to give a speech, and Lisa had been looking forward to hearing what her best friend would say. But as Vanessa stood, her eyes briefly flickering over to Mark, Lisa felt an odd chill run through her. She shook it off, telling herself it was nothing. She was just overthinking things, right? Vanessa cleared her throat and smiled brightly. "Lisa and I have been best friends for as long as I can remember," she began, her voice warm and confident. "We've shared everything together, from our first crush to our college days, to now, watching her marry the love of her life. But what most of you don't know is that Lisa has always been more than just a friend. She's been my sister, my confidant, my partner in crime. And today, she's about to start a new chapter in her life, with someone who makes her truly happy." Lisa smiled at her words, touched by her best friend's kind sentiments. But then, Vanessa's gaze flickered to Mark once again, and for a fraction of a second, there was something Lisa couldn't put her finger on lurking behind her smile. A flicker of something darker. And Mark, Vanessa continued, turning her attention back to Lisa's husband. I'm so happy that you're the one who gets to be with Lisa now. You're a great guy, and she's lucky to have you. But just remember, she's always been my girl, and I've always got her back. The words were innocent enough on the surface, but Lisa felt a tension in the room. A ripple of discomfort seemed to spread among the guests. Mark's smile faltered ever so slightly, though he quickly recovered, giving Vanessa a polite nod. Lisa, trying to read between the lines of Vanessa's speech, felt her stomach churn. The words seemed too carefully crafted, as if they were meant to say more than they actually did. Thank you, Vanessa, Lisa said, her voice trembling slightly, though she tried to cover it with a smile. That means the world to me. Vanessa flashed a sweet smile, her eyes never leaving Mark. Of course, Lisa, she said, her voice laced with an unsettling sweetness. Lisa turned to Mark, her thoughts racing. Was she overthinking it? Maybe this was just the nerves talking. She had always considered Vanessa her rock, her best friend, but recently, there had been moments, small, almost imperceptible shifts that made Lisa question things. Her behavior had changed subtly over the last few months. The way Vanessa had become distant whenever Lisa talked about Mark, the way she seemed to avoid spending time with them together, and that strange moment during the bridal shower when she'd snapped at Lisa over something trivial. Lisa had brushed it all off, thinking it was just stress, but now it all felt different. As the night wore on, Lisa tried to push the thoughts to the back of her mind. It was her wedding day, her happiest day, and nothing should ruin it. She danced with Mark, surrounded by friends and family, lost in the warmth of their love and the joy of the celebration. But every now and then, her gaze would drift to Vanessa, who was talking to the guests with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. By the time the evening rolled into late-night celebrations, Lisa was feeling a strange mixture of excitement and dread. There had been little moments throughout the evening that unsettled her, but none more so than when she caught Vanessa and Mark in a private conversation near the bar. Their words were too hushed for Lisa to hear, but their body language said enough. Vanessa was leaning in slightly, laughing at something Mark had said, her hand placed a little too close to his shoulder. Lisa felt an uncomfortable lump rise in her throat. What was going on? Why was she feeling this way? Are you okay? Mark's voice cut through her thoughts, and she looked up to see him standing beside her. His face was soft with concern, but Lisa could tell that he, too, was feeling the weight of the day. I'm fine, she lied, offering him a tight smile. It's just, everything's happening so fast, you know? Mark smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. I get it. But we're here now, and everything's perfect. For a moment, Lisa let herself believe him. Maybe everything was perfect. But something told her that this feeling that something wasn't quite right would linger long after the guests had gone home. The morning after the wedding felt like a dream. Lisa woke up in the cozy hotel suite where she and Mark had spent their first night as husband and wife. The scent of flowers from their wedding bouquets still lingered in the air, and the soft glow of morning light filtered through the curtains, casting a serene ambience over the room. Mark was still asleep beside her, his peaceful expression a stark contrast to the restlessness that had taken root in Lisa's heart. As she lay there, staring at the ceiling, the previous evening's events played out in her mind. The wedding, the celebration, the guests, everything had seemed flawless. But there had been moments, fleeting but noticeable, that unsettled her. The way Vanessa had acted, the strange tension between her and Mark, the coldness in her smile. Lisa had tried to push the nagging thoughts aside, but they wouldn't leave. Something felt off, something she couldn't quite put her finger on. Lisa shifted in bed, careful not to wake Mark, and reached for her phone. Her heart sank as she saw the numerous texts and missed calls from Vanessa. It was unusual for Vanessa to contact her so early, especially after such an intense night. Frowning, Lisa hesitated for a moment before opening the first message. Lisa, I'm so sorry for everything last night. I know I probably made things awkward, but I really care about you. Can we talk soon? I just want things to be okay between us. Please don't let anything ruin your happiness. The words were conciliatory, almost too apologetic, but it was the timing of the message that made Lisa pause. Why would Vanessa apologize when everything had seemed fine? She had made a point of delivering her speech with such intensity, and now, after the fact, she was suddenly expressing regret. Lisa quickly scanned the rest of the messages, but they all followed the same tone: apologetic, insistent, and strangely emotional. I know things have changed, but you'll always be my best friend, no matter what. I didn't mean to cause any problems. I just don't want you to think I don't care about you. I'm so sorry for how things went last night. I didn't mean to make you feel uncomfortable. Lisa frowned, her mind racing. The messages were too much, too over the top. Why was Vanessa so desperate to apologize? And why now? She tapped out a quick reply: "We'll talk when I get back. I'm a bit tired, and I need some space. Let's catch up soon." As she sent the message, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Vanessa had been her best friend for so long, but now, it felt as though she were a stranger, someone Lisa didn't quite understand anymore. The friendship that had once been a source of comfort and support now felt suffocating, weighed down by too many unanswered questions. Lisa put her phone down and turned to face Mark, who was still sleeping soundly. She couldn't help but smile at the sight of him. Despite the unease lingering in the back of her mind, she knew one thing for certain: she loved him, and she was so grateful to have him by her side. But there was something she needed to address, something that couldn't wait. She kissed him gently on the cheek, careful not to wake him, and quietly slipped out of bed. The weight of the day ahead loomed over her, but there was no denying that she needed to have a conversation with Vanessa, one that would finally clear the air. After a quick breakfast, Lisa and Mark spent the morning together, enjoying the last moments of their honeymoon before they had to return to reality. Mark seemed oblivious to the tension Lisa was feeling, which was a relief in some ways, but also made her feel guilty. She didn't want to burden him with her worries. This was their special time, and she didn't want to let anything, especially Vanessa, spoil it. But as the day wore on, Lisa couldn't shake the feeling that something was building. A storm she wasn't prepared for. Around midday, she finally gave in and called Vanessa. The phone rang several times before Vanessa picked up. "Lisa, hi." Vanessa's voice was bright, but there was an undercurrent of something darker that Lisa couldn't ignore. "I was hoping you'd call. I'm really sorry about last night. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. Can we talk? I need you to know that I'm still your friend, and I care about you." Lisa's heart skipped a beat at the desperation in Vanessa's voice. It felt like too much too soon, like an apology that was trying to cover something up. She took a deep breath, steadying her emotions before speaking. "Vanessa, I appreciate your apology, but honestly, I don't know what's going on. Last night was strange. You seemed off, and I don't understand why you were acting that way. The way you looked at Mark, there was something in your eyes that I didn't like. I don't know if it's just me, but it felt like there was tension between you two. And that's not okay with me." There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and for a moment, Lisa thought Vanessa wasn't going to respond. When she finally spoke, her voice was strained, a little too soft. "I didn't mean to make you feel that way, Lisa. Really. I swear. I was just... I don't know. I was trying to be supportive, but it's been hard for me to see you with Mark. It's just been difficult, okay? I know you've noticed things, and I haven't been myself lately, but you don't understand. I've been jealous. Of him, of you, of everything." Lisa's stomach dropped. She felt like the ground had just been ripped from beneath her. "What do you mean, jealous? Vanessa, you're my best friend. Why would you be jealous of me? Because I love you, Lisa, Vanessa whispered, her voice trembling. And I've always loved you. I just didn't know how to handle it when you found someone else. Mark is amazing, and I can see how happy he makes you, but it killed me to watch you walk down the aisle to him, knowing I could never have that. I'm sorry, I never meant to hurt you, but I was angry and her voice broke off, and Lisa could hear the faint sound of Vanessa trying to hold back tears. Lisa felt a coldness wash over her. She had never, ever suspected that Vanessa had harbored feelings for her. It made no sense, and yet, as the words hung in the air between them, it all began to click. The distance, the tension, the strange behavior, it all pointed to the same thing. Vanessa hadn't just been a friend. She had wanted more. And now, she was unraveling in front of Lisa. I didn't know, Lisa whispered, her throat tight with disbelief. I didn't know, Vanessa. I thought we were just friends. Best friends. I know, Vanessa replied, her voice small now, almost a whisper. I've been lying to you, lying to myself. I never meant to hurt you, but I just couldn't stand it anymore. You deserve someone who loves you the way you deserve. And I thought I could handle it, but I couldn't. I just couldn't. Lisa closed her eyes, feeling a wave of confusion and sadness hit her all at once. Her best friend, the one person she had trusted most in the world, had been hiding this from her, all while pretending to be the supportive maid of honor. It was a betrayal she hadn't seen coming. Vanessa, I don't know what to say, Lisa whispered. I need time to process all of this. I understand, Vanessa replied softly. I'm sorry. I never wanted to make things difficult for you. With that, Lisa ended the call, her heart heavy with the weight of the conversation. Vanessa's confession had changed everything. She didn't know how to move forward, how to repair a friendship that had been built on lies and secrets. And as she sat there, staring out at the world outside the hotel window, she realized that her wedding day wasn't the beginning of the fairy tale she had always dreamed of. It was the start of a much darker, more complicated story. The days that followed were a blur of confusion and disbelief. Lisa hadn't expected her wedding day to be the beginning of a journey into uncharted emotional territory, but here she was standing on the precipice of a world that seemed suddenly unfamiliar. The first few hours after the call with Vanessa felt like a fog, and even Mark's comforting presence couldn't cut through the haze. Mark, ever the optimist, tried to reassure her. He was there for her, always. But the weight of what Vanessa had confessed hung heavily in the air, and Lisa could feel the tension mounting inside her. She wanted to be happy, wanted to enjoy her new life as Mark's wife, but how could she when the very foundation of her closest friendship had crumbled? The confrontation with Vanessa had left Lisa feeling lost. The betrayal wasn't just about Vanessa's secret feelings, it was the years of trust that had been shattered in a matter of moments. How many times had they laughed together, confided in one another, shared their deepest secrets? How could Lisa have been so blind to the truth? That night, Lisa found herself in the hotel room, alone with her thoughts, while Mark went out to meet some friends who had stayed behind after the wedding. He had insisted she rest, but her mind refused to quiet. Every corner of the room seemed to echo with the memories of the wedding, of the speeches, the laughter, the celebration. She had danced with Vanessa, oblivious to the fact that behind the smiles, there was a simmering tension that had gone unnoticed. She sat down at the vanity, staring at her reflection in the mirror. Her wedding dress, beautiful and white, now so symbolic of a day that had gone horribly wrong, was still hanging in the closet. The veil was neatly folded beside it. A part of her wanted to pack it all away, to forget that the day had ever happened. But another part of her, an aching, broken part, wanted to hold on to what it was supposed to represent, the dream, the hope of a new beginning. The phone buzzed on the nightstand, jolting her from her thoughts. It was a message from Vanessa, another apology. Lisa, please listen to me. I'm sorry for everything. I know I hurt you. I wasn't thinking straight, and I should have been honest with you from the start. I never meant to cause all this chaos. Please don't let this ruin everything we've had. Lisa stared at the message, her fingers hovering over the screen. She didn't know what to do with it. Vanessa was sorry, yes. But it was too late for apologies. The damage had already been done. And Lisa wasn't sure if she could ever look at Vanessa the same way again. A part of Lisa wanted to pick up the phone, to call Vanessa and demand answers, to make sense of the confusion. But the more she thought about it, the more she realized that some answers weren't meant to be found. There was no going back to the friendship they once had. What they had shared was irrevocably changed, and Lisa wasn't sure if it was worth salvaging. She tossed the phone aside and leaned back in the chair, letting the quiet of the room surround her. Her thoughts drifted back to the wedding, to the way Vanessa had acted. The sudden, forced cheerfulness, the odd way she had kept looking at Mark. It all made sense now, but it didn't make the pain any easier to bear. Lisa felt betrayed not just by Vanessa's feelings, but by her own naivety. She had trusted her, believed that their friendship was unshakable. But now, she couldn't help but question everything. Had Vanessa ever truly been her friend, or had she been playing a part all along? Had the jealousy been festering for years, hidden behind the facade of support and laughter? And then there was Mark. He had no idea about Vanessa's confession. He didn't know the truth about why Vanessa had been so distant and cold on their wedding day. Lisa hadn't told him yet. She didn't want to burden him, didn't want to take away from the happiness they should be sharing. But she knew she couldn't keep it from him forever. She couldn't carry this secret alone. The next morning, after a restless night of tossing and turning, Lisa knew it was time to face Mark. She couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine. Not when her heart was heavy with the weight of what had happened. Mark was sitting at the breakfast table, reading through some papers for work. He looked up as she entered, his face lighting up with a warm smile. But Lisa couldn't smile back. She couldn't hide the sadness that had settled in her chest. "Morning, love," Mark said, his voice soft, as he reached for a cup of coffee. "You okay?" Lisa stood by the door, unsure of how to begin. She didn't want to ruin their morning, didn't want to spoil the joy of their first few days as a married couple. But she couldn't keep the truth from him. It was too big to ignore. "Mark," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "We need to talk." Mark set down his coffee mug and looked up, concern crossing his features. He stood up, moving toward her with a reassuring smile, but Lisa could see the confusion in his eyes. "What's wrong?" he asked, taking her hand gently. Lisa hesitated, then took a deep breath. "I need to tell you something about Vanessa. About last night." Mark's brow furrowed, his hand tightening around hers. "What about her? Is she okay?" Lisa could see the concern in his eyes, but she knew this conversation was inevitable. The truth had to come out. "She's not okay, Mark," Lisa said quietly. "And I don't know how to say this, but Vanessa confessed something to me yesterday. Something I never expected." Mark's expression changed, his brow knitting together in confusion. "What do you mean?" She told me that she's been in love with me, Mark. That she's always loved me," Lisa whispered, her voice barely above a whisper. "That's why she's been acting so strange. That's why she's been distant. She's jealous, and she didn't know how to handle it." For a moment, Mark just stared at her, his eyes wide with disbelief. Then, slowly, his face softened. He pulled Lisa into a tight hug, holding her close as if trying to protect her from the weight of the revelation. "I'm so sorry, Lisa," Mark said softly, his voice full of compassion. "I can't imagine how much that must hurt." Lisa nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. She had never expected this, never thought that her best friend could harbor such feelings for her. She had been blind to it all, and now it was too late to undo the damage. "I don't know what to do, Mark," Lisa said, her voice breaking. "I don't know if I can ever trust her again." Mark pulled back, cupping her face in his hands. "You don't have to figure it all out right now. Take your time. I'm here for you, no matter what." Lisa nodded, grateful for his support, but a part of her still felt lost. The betrayal cut deep, and she wasn't sure if she could ever go back to being the person she was before this all happened. The wedding was supposed to be the start of their happily ever after, but now, it felt like the beginning of something far more complicated. The trust that had been shattered between her and Vanessa would take time to heal, if it ever could. And as much as she loved Mark, the emotional weight of everything that had transpired was too much for her to carry alone. The days following the conversation with Mark were filled with an uncomfortable silence, punctuated only by the hum of daily life. Lisa couldn't escape the heaviness that lingered in the air between them. She wanted to move on, to bury the weight of Vanessa's confession, but it was impossible to ignore. Every time she glanced at her phone, a message from Vanessa would stare back at her, begging for forgiveness, for a chance to make things right. Lisa had deleted most of them without reading further, but they kept coming. One after another, a flood of apologies and pleas. Mark, understanding her need for space, didn't press the matter further. He was patient, tender, but even he knew that there was no easy fix for what had happened. Lisa had always been close to Vanessa, their bond seemed unbreakable. Yet, now, everything felt shattered. Every memory of their friendship was tainted, and Lisa found herself questioning whether it had all been real or just a carefully constructed facade. That Saturday, a week after the wedding, Mark suggested they take a break from the tension and head out to his family's lake house. It was peaceful, secluded, and the perfect setting to clear their minds. Lisa reluctantly agreed, hoping the change of scenery would help her regain some sense of control over her emotions. The drive to the lake house was quiet, save for the occasional comment about their plans for the weekend. Mark, ever the optimist, tried his best to keep the conversation light. He spoke about the nearby hiking trails, the beautiful views at sunset, and even joked about how Lisa would probably beat him at kayaking. His attempt at normalcy was endearing, but Lisa couldn't shake the feeling that everything was different now. When they arrived, the cool air and the sight of the serene lake stretched out before them were enough to temporarily silence the noise in her mind. She stood by the shore for a while, gazing at the ripples in the water, trying to lose herself in its calmness. Mark came up beside her, his presence comforting but distant. He wasn't pushing her to talk, but she knew he was waiting. The tension was palpable, but in a way, the stillness of the place seemed to provide a small measure of peace. "I used to come here with my parents," Mark said, breaking the silence. "They always said this was where we could find clarity, where we could work through anything." Lisa nodded, but she couldn't help but wonder if that kind of clarity was even possible after everything that had happened. How could she find peace in a place where betrayal had shattered her foundation? As they sat down on the porch that evening, watching the sun dip below the horizon, Lisa finally spoke. Her voice was soft, as though she were testing the waters before diving deeper into the conversation. "Mark," she began, her eyes focused on the darkening lake, "I don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to move on from what Vanessa did." Mark turned to her, his gaze unwavering. "You don't have to have all the answers right now, Lisa. You don't have to fix anything. I just want to be here for you, whatever that looks like." Lisa swallowed hard, her heart aching at the depth of his words. But even as she appreciated his support, she couldn't help but feel that there was something she had to confront, something she couldn't run from. "Do you think I should talk to Vanessa?" she asked, her voice cracking slightly. "Do you think I should give her a chance to explain? Maybe there's something I missed." Mark hesitated for a moment, clearly thinking it over. "I think you need to do what feels right for you, Lisa. If you think there's a chance to mend things, then maybe you should. But don't do it just because you feel like you have to. It's okay to protect yourself, too." Lisa nodded, but deep down, she knew that repairing their friendship was no simple matter. Vanessa's betrayal had cut too deep, and as much as she longed for the days when their bond had been unshakable, she wasn't sure if she could ever trust her again. That night, as they settled into bed in the quiet of the lake house, Lisa found herself tossing and turning. The memories of the wedding day replayed in her mind like a broken record. The laughter, the dancing, the joy, and then the phone call that had shattered it all. How could she have missed the signs? How could she not have seen Vanessa's feelings for what they truly were? The next morning, after a restless night, Lisa decided she needed answers that only Vanessa could provide. But as she sat at the breakfast table, the phone in her hand felt heavier than ever. She knew she had to make a decision, either face Vanessa head-on and hear her out, or walk away and leave the past behind. She tapped out a message, her fingers shaking slightly. "Vanessa, we need to talk. I'm not sure where we go from here, but I need some answers. I'm not sure if I can forgive you, but I can't keep living in the unknown." The message felt like a release, a tentative step towards finding closure. It wasn't a promise of reconciliation, but it was a step in the right direction. Mark was watching her from across the table, a gentle smile on his face. "You don't have to do anything you're not ready for, Lisa. But I'm proud of you for reaching out. You're taking control of this situation, and that's all that matters." Lisa nodded, feeling a small sense of relief. Maybe it wasn't about finding the perfect solution. Maybe it was just about facing the truth, no matter how difficult it was. The phone buzzed in her hand. Vanessa's reply. "I'm so sorry, Lisa. I know I've hurt you, and I will understand if you don't want to hear from me again. But I need to tell you everything. I need you to know the truth." Lisa took a deep breath, her heart racing. She wasn't sure if she was ready for the truth, but one thing was certain. She couldn't hide from it anymore. The story was far from over. Lisa sat at the edge of the bed, her thumb hovering over the screen of her phone. Vanessa's reply had come almost instantly, and it was more than just an apology. It was a promise to explain, to give Lisa the truth, something that felt both terrifying and necessary. But as much as Lisa wanted to hear it, there was a part of her that feared what she might uncover. How much of their friendship had been real? How much of it had been a lie? She glanced over at Mark, who had been quiet ever since she received the message. He hadn't pressed her to respond, sensing the weight of the moment. But Lisa knew he was waiting, just as she was, for the next step. "I think I should call her," Lisa said, breaking the silence that had settled over them. Her voice was steady, but there was an undercurrent of anxiety that she couldn't hide. Mark nodded, his expression soft. "Do whatever you need to do, Lisa. I'm right here." She took a deep breath and tapped the phone to dial Vanessa's number. The sound of the ringing in her ear felt like an eternity, each second stretching longer than the last. Lisa couldn't tell if she was more anxious about hearing Vanessa's side of the story or the possibility of hearing nothing at all. Finally, after what felt like an endless wait, Vanessa picked up. "Lisa," her voice cracked slightly, and Lisa could hear the tension and guilt hanging between them. "I didn't expect you to call. I thought you'd never want to speak to me again." Lisa felt a lump rise in her throat, the pain from their friendship slipping away, replaced by a need for answers. "I don't know what to expect, Vanessa. But I need to hear the truth. I need to know why you did what you did." There was a pause on the other end of the line, a long, pregnant silence before Vanessa spoke again, her voice small and vulnerable. "I never meant for it to go this far, Lisa," she began, the words tumbling out in a rush. "I've always loved you. I think I always have. And when I found out you were with Mark, I didn't know how to handle it. I didn't know how to let go. I was angry, jealous, and hurt. I didn't know who to blame, so I blamed you." Lisa's heart pounded in her chest as the weight of Vanessa's words settled in. It wasn't just about a fleeting crush or unspoken feelings, it was about years of suppressed emotions, buried under the surface of a friendship Lisa thought she understood. "I don't know when it started," Vanessa continued, her voice shaky. "Maybe it was when we were in college. You and we've always been so close, and I thought that meant something more. But then Mark came along, and it felt like you were slipping away from me, like I was losing you to him. I hated that feeling, Lisa. I hated it so much, but I couldn't stop it. And I was scared. So scared. Lisa listened, trying to process everything Vanessa was saying, but it was hard to make sense of it all. How could someone she had trusted, someone she had shared so many memories with, harbor such intense feelings of resentment and jealousy? How could she have missed all the signs? I should have told you sooner, Vanessa's voice softened, a tinge of regret lacing her words. I should have been honest with you, but I wasn't. I didn't know how to deal with it. And I couldn't bear the thought of losing you. Lisa closed her eyes, feeling the sting of betrayal deepen. It wasn't just the fact that Vanessa had feelings for her. It was that she had kept it a secret, hidden behind the mask of friendship, for all this time. But more than that, it was the way Vanessa had let her jealousy fester, allowed it to control her actions to the point where she had hurt Lisa on the most important day of her life. I don't know what to say, Vanessa, Lisa whispered, her voice thick with emotion. I don't know if I can ever forgive you for what you did. I know, Lisa, Vanessa replied, her voice trembling. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve it. But I need you to understand. I never wanted to hurt you. I just didn't know how to handle everything I was feeling. And I'm so sorry. Lisa took a long breath, trying to calm the storm brewing inside her. Part of her wanted to scream, to let the anger and hurt flood out of her. Another part of her just wanted to hang up the phone and never look back. But she knew this wasn't about her immediate feelings. This was about understanding the depth of what had happened, about seeking closure. I need some time, Vanessa, Lisa said, her voice steady but pained. I don't know what this means for our friendship, but I need to think. I need space. I understand, Vanessa replied softly. I'll respect whatever you need. But please know that I will always care about you, Lisa. I'll never stop caring. Lisa ended the call without another word, the silence that followed echoing in her ears. She lowered the phone to her lap and exhaled a shaky breath. The conversation had left her emotionally drained, yet there was a sense of clarity in the midst of the confusion. She hadn't gotten all the answers she was hoping for, but she had heard Vanessa's side of the story. She had learned why it happened. But now, the question was, what was she going to do with this knowledge? Mark, who had been waiting patiently, saw the troubled expression on Lisa's face as she placed the phone on the table. He didn't ask right away, he simply reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. How are you feeling? He asked softly, his gaze filled with concern. Lisa took a moment, gathering her thoughts before responding. I don't know what to think, Mark. Vanessa's been carrying this resentment for years. And I never knew. I never saw it coming. Mark nodded, his fingers tightening around hers. I can't imagine how that feels. But you're not alone in this, Lisa. You don't have to carry this burden by yourself. Lisa sighed, leaning into Mark's embrace. I don't know if I can ever trust her again. I don't know if our friendship is something I want to salvage. Mark didn't answer right away. Instead, he just held her, allowing her to feel the warmth of his support. He didn't push her to make any decisions, he just let her feel what she needed to feel. I'll be here, Lisa, he said, his voice steady. Whatever you decide, I'll be here. Lisa closed her eyes, allowing the moment to sink in. The road ahead was uncertain, but she knew one thing for sure, she wasn't alone. The days after her conversation with Vanessa passed slowly, each one dragging as Lisa wrestled with her emotions. Mark had been a steady presence in her life, offering comfort without demanding anything in return. Still, Lisa couldn't shake the constant loop of thoughts swirling in her mind. What was she supposed to do now? Was forgiveness possible? Could their friendship ever be repaired, or had it been irreparably damaged by Vanessa's betrayal? As much as she tried to focus on the present, her mind would often drift back to that painful moment, the wedding day when everything had come crashing down. Lisa had dreamed of that day for years, envisioning a perfect celebration surrounded by love and joy. But instead, It had been marred by deception, betrayal, and heartache. And now, the person who had been the closest to her, the one she had trusted most, had revealed a side of herself that Lisa never knew existed. It wasn't just about the wedding, though. It was about the years of friendship they had shared, the laughter, the secrets, the promises. Had it all been a lie? Had Vanessa ever truly cared for her as a friend, or had it all been a facade? Lisa sat on the balcony of Mark's family lake house, staring out over the still water. The serene view was a sharp contrast to the turmoil she felt inside. She had always been someone who sought answers, who tried to make sense of things. But this situation was different. There were no clear answers, no easy solutions. Everything felt clouded in uncertainty. Mark joined her on the balcony, quietly sitting beside her. He didn't ask her to talk, but she could feel his concern in the way he looked at her, in the way his presence anchored her. After a few moments of silence, Lisa finally spoke, her voice small. "I don't know what to do, Mark. I don't know if I can forgive Vanessa for what she did." Mark turned to face her, his expression gentle. "You don't have to forgive her right now, Lisa. Forgiveness isn't something you can just give because someone asks for it. It takes time, and it has to come from your heart. But you don't have to make that decision yet." Lisa sighed, feeling the weight of his words. She knew he was right. There was no rush. She didn't have to make a choice immediately, but the pressure of the situation was suffocating. Every day felt like a ticking clock, the decision to confront Vanessa or cut ties growing more urgent with each passing hour. That evening, as they sat down to dinner, Lisa's phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at it, seeing the name Vanessa flashing on the screen. It had been days since they last spoke, and Lisa wasn't sure if she was ready for another round of apologies or explanations. But this time, something inside her stirred a need to hear what Vanessa had to say. With a deep breath, she picked up the phone and answered. "Lisa," Vanessa's voice was tentative, almost pleading. "I've been thinking a lot about what we talked about, and I know I've hurt you. I'm not asking for your forgiveness, but I want you to know that I'm truly sorry. I don't expect things to go back to normal, but I want you to understand how much I regret everything." Lisa paused, her hand tightening around the phone. "Vanessa, I don't know if I can trust you again. What you did, it was unforgivable. You knew how important that day was to me, and you ruined it." "I know," Vanessa's voice cracked. "I didn't think it through. I let my emotions control me, and I made a terrible mistake. I can't undo what I did, but I need you to know that I was never trying to hurt you. I was afraid of losing you, Lisa. I've always been afraid of losing you." Lisa closed her eyes, the raw emotion in Vanessa's words cutting through her like a knife. The truth of it all settled into her chest, heavy and cold. It wasn't just jealousy, it was fear of losing something that had once been so important to Vanessa. But fear didn't excuse betrayal. It didn't excuse the cruelty that Lisa had experienced. "I understand that you were afraid," Lisa said, her voice trembling slightly. "But that doesn't make it okay, Vanessa. What you did, everything you did, was cruel. It was selfish. I don't know if I can ever see you the same way again." Vanessa's silence was a heavy pause, as if she was absorbing the finality of Lisa's words. "I understand," she said softly. "And I won't blame you if you never want to talk to me again. I need you to know that I am sorry. I didn't mean for any of this to happen." Lisa swallowed hard, her heart conflicted. She didn't know what to say anymore, didn't know how to respond to the endless apologies. She had heard them all before, and each one felt less genuine than the last. How could she accept an apology from someone who had caused so much damage? "I need time, Vanessa," Lisa finally said, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside her. "I need time to figure out if there's even a chance to rebuild what we had. But right now, I don't know if that's possible." "I understand," Vanessa whispered, and there was a finality in her voice. "I'll leave you to think." But just know that I'll always be here if you decide you want to talk." Lisa hung up the phone and sat in silence, the weight of her decision pressing down on her. She didn't know what the future held. She didn't know if she could ever trust Vanessa again. But she also knew that she couldn't keep living in this limbo, stuck between the past and the future, caught between love and betrayal. As the evening wore on, Mark sat with her, not pushing her to make a decision, but offering her a quiet support that she desperately needed. He could sense her inner turmoil, the way she was torn between what was right and what was safe. He didn't try to fix it for her, but he offered her the one thing she couldn't get anywhere else: his patience. "Take your time, Lisa," Mark said gently, his hand resting on hers. "You don't have to have all the answers today. Just take it one step at a time. Whatever you decide, I'll be here." Lisa nodded, the weight of the decision still heavy in her heart. But for the first time in days, she didn't feel so alone. She had Mark by her side, and for now, that was enough. Lisa woke up the next morning with a strange emptiness inside her. The conversation with Vanessa the night before had done nothing to ease the pain. If anything, it had only deepened it. She had tried to give Vanessa the benefit of the doubt, to understand the jealousy and fear that had motivated her actions, but nothing seemed to make it okay. The betrayal still stung. Mark had left early for work, and Lisa found herself alone in the quiet house, the weight of her decision pressing on her more than ever. She needed answers. She needed closure. But could she get that from someone who had broken her trust so completely? With a deep sigh, she reached for her phone. For the first time since their call, she felt an urge to text Vanessa, to demand answers, to push for the truth. But as she typed the message, she paused, unsure of what she even wanted to say. Words had become so meaningless in this situation. Every apology, every explanation, felt hollow. The day dragged on slowly. Lisa found herself lost in her thoughts, replaying every moment she had spent with Vanessa, every late-night conversation, every shared secret, every inside joke. It had all felt so real. So genuine. How could it have all been a lie? By late afternoon, Lisa received a message from Vanessa. This time, it wasn't an apology. It was a plea asking to meet in person. Lisa stared at the screen, torn between curiosity and anger. Did she really want to face her? To hear more of the same excuses? But there was a part of her that still needed closure. She had to know if there was any truth left in their friendship or if it had all been a facade from the very beginning. She agreed to meet, arranging to meet at a nearby cafe. When Lisa arrived, Vanessa was already there, sitting at a small table by the window. She looked smaller than Lisa remembered, her eyes red and swollen as if she had been crying for days. But Lisa couldn't bring herself to feel sorry for her, not yet. Vanessa stood up as Lisa approached, her voice trembling. "Lisa, I don't know what you want from me anymore," Lisa interrupted, her voice cold. "I can't keep going back and forth, trying to figure out what's real and what's not. I don't know if I can forgive you." Tears welled in Vanessa's eyes, but she didn't try to wipe them away. "I don't expect you to forgive me right away, Lisa. I need you to understand that I never meant for any of this to happen. I messed up. I hurt you, and I can't take that back." Lisa's heart twisted in her chest. She wanted to feel something for Vanessa, to feel empathy or forgiveness, but she just couldn't. The damage had been done, and it felt too deep to heal. "I think it's time for us to let go," Lisa said quietly, her voice breaking despite her resolve. "I can't keep holding on to something that was never real." Vanessa's face crumpled, and Lisa saw the weight of regret in her eyes. But there was nothing more to say. Sometimes, there wasn't a happy ending, and that's all Lisa could accept. Lisa walked away from the cafe feeling an unexpected sense of relief. The finality of her decision had settled in her chest, and though it still hurt, she knew it was the right one. Letting go of Vanessa wasn't just about ending a friendship, it was about reclaiming her peace of mind, her dignity, and her future. As she drove back to the lake house, The setting sun cast a golden glow over everything, and for the first time in days, she allowed herself to breathe deeply. It wasn't the closure she had imagined, nor the reconciliation she had once hoped for. But it was a beginning, a chance to move forward without the weight of betrayal on her shoulders. She entered the house quietly, feeling the emptiness of the space without Mark there. He had gone out for a walk to give her space to process her emotions. Lisa appreciated the gesture, but she missed his presence. He had become a steady support in her life, someone she could lean on when the world felt like it was falling apart. Lisa sat down on the couch, her thoughts drifting to everything that had happened over the past few weeks. She had been blindsided by Vanessa's actions, her world turned upside down in the span of a single day. But in a way, it had forced her to face her own vulnerabilities, her own need for validation from others. She had allowed herself to be consumed by the idea of a perfect friendship, of a picture-perfect life. But perfection was an illusion, and sometimes, the hardest lesson was accepting that things didn't always work out the way we planned. It was painful, but it was also freeing. The sound of the door opening broke her reverie, and Mark entered the room, his eyes searching for hers. "How did it go?" he asked softly, his concern evident in his voice. Lisa stood up and met him halfway, her heart heavy but resolute. "It's over," she said simply, her voice steady. "I told her that I couldn't keep holding on to a friendship that wasn't real. It wasn't easy, but I know it was the right decision." Mark's expression softened, and he pulled her into a hug. "I'm proud of you, Lisa. I know it wasn't easy, but you did what you needed to do." Lisa rested her head on his shoulder, feeling the warmth of his embrace. It was a comfort she hadn't realized she needed, and in that moment, she allowed herself to lean into it. "I don't know what's next, Mark. I don't know what my future looks like without Vanessa in it." Mark pulled back slightly to look her in the eyes. "You'll figure it out. You're stronger than you think, Lisa. And you don't have to do it alone. I'm here for you, no matter what." Tears threatened to fall, but Lisa held them back. It wasn't about crying anymore, it was about healing. And healing wasn't always a quick process, but it was a necessary one. She smiled faintly, grateful for Mark's unwavering support. "Thank you, Mark. I don't know what I would have done without you." He smiled back, his eyes warm and understanding. "You don't have to thank me. That's what friends are for." Lisa nodded, feeling a sense of calm she hadn't felt in days. The road ahead would be difficult, but she no longer felt like she was walking it alone. She had people who cared for her, and that was enough. As they sat together in silence, the evening stretched on, and for the first time in a long while, Lisa felt like she was finally in control of her own life again. Vanessa might have torn apart her wedding, but she would not have the power to destroy her future. The weeks that followed were a journey of healing and self-discovery for Lisa. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't quick, but with every passing day, she felt the weight of the betrayal lift from her shoulders. Letting go of Vanessa had been the hardest thing she had ever done, but it also turned out to be one of the most freeing. With Mark's continued support and encouragement, Lisa found herself rediscovering parts of herself that had been buried beneath the expectations of others. She had spent so much of her life trying to please those around her, trying to live up to ideals that weren't truly hers. But now, she was learning to prioritize her own happiness, to trust her instincts, and to make choices that were best for her without guilt or second-guessing. One of the most significant changes came in her relationship with Mark. What had started as a supportive friendship had grown into something more meaningful, though neither of them rushed to define it. There was a quiet understanding between them, an unspoken bond that felt natural and comfortable. As they spent more time together, Lisa found herself growing closer to him, not out of need, but out of a genuine connection. He was no longer just a friend who had been there during the storm. He was someone who made her smile even on the hardest days, someone who made her feel like she deserved love and happiness. Lisa also took time for herself, something she hadn't done in a long while. She returned to old hobbies she had neglected, painting, reading, and long walks through the park. Each small moment of self-care allowed her to reconnect with the person she was before everything had unraveled. She found peace in the stillness, and in the quiet spaces of her life, she realized that she had everything she needed to move forward. But Vanessa's shadow still lingered, though it was becoming less and less significant in her life. Lisa didn't dwell on the past anymore, but sometimes, when she least expected it, memories would surface, happy moments that now felt tainted. She didn't know if she would ever truly forgive Vanessa, but she had come to understand that forgiveness wasn't a gift she had to give for Vanessa's sake. It was something Lisa needed for herself. One evening, as Lisa and Mark sat on the porch of the lake house, sipping wine and talking about everything and nothing, Lisa found herself reflecting on how far she had come. The woman sitting there, with a heart full of hope and a life full of possibility, was different from the one who had walked into the cafe to meet Vanessa just a few weeks before. "I'm not sure what the future holds," Lisa said quietly, her gaze fixed on the setting sun. "But I'm ready to face it. Whatever it is." Mark smiled, his gaze soft and understanding. "You've come a long way, Lisa. I'm proud of you." Lisa turned to him, her heart swelling with gratitude. "Thank you, Mark. I couldn't have done it without you." "You never had to do it alone," he replied with a gentle smile. "That's what I'm here for." They sat in comfortable silence, the sound of the lake gently lapping at the shore in the background. The world felt right in that moment, and for the first time in a long time, Lisa allowed herself to believe that she deserved this peace. As the stars began to appear in the sky, Lisa made a promise to herself. No matter what the future held, no matter what challenges came her way, she would face them with strength and clarity. She would no longer allow anyone to have the power to dictate her happiness, not even Vanessa. She would create her own story, and she would write it on her terms. The darkness of the past was behind her, and the light of the future was just beginning to shine. And for the first time in a long time, Lisa felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be.